Welcome back to another Haven't Read It video. We got 4 stories today from Malicious Compliance. Our first story of the day. Manager said, no phones during work hours, period. So I stopped answering his calls. I work IT support for a medium-sized company. We've always been allowed to have our phones at our desks. Sometimes family emergencies happen, doctors call back, whatever. As long as we weren't scrolling social media all day, nobody cared. New manager comes in last month, sees one person checking a text, and loses it. Sends out an email. Effective immediately. No personal phones during work hours. They must be left in your car or locker. This means 9 to 5. No exceptions. Anyone caught with a phone will be written up. Okay, sure, boss. The thing is, our manager works from home 3 days a week. And when server issues pop up after hours or on weekends, guess how he contacts us? That's right, our personal phones. We don't have company phones. Friday afternoon, 4:45 p.m., major server issue. I see it, could fix it in 10 minutes, but my phone is in my car as per policy. I calmly finish my work at 5 and walk out. By the time I get to my car and check my phone at 5:15, I have 17 missed calls and a string of increasingly panicked texts from my manager. The server has been down for 30 minutes. Multiple departments can't do anything. I call him back. Hey, just got to my car and saw your calls. What's up? He's furious, malding and seething, asking why I didn't answer. I remind him about the no phones policy. He says that's different. This was an emergency. I point out his email said, no exceptions, and I was just following policy to avoid a write-up. Monday morning, new email. Personal phones are permitted at desks for emergency purposes. Top comment says, awesome work, but I would have driven home first. Right? Take all the time before messaging them. Second top comment quotes OP. And when the server issues pop up after hours or on weekends, guess how he contacts us? That's right, our personal phones. We don't have company phones. This is the real problem. If he wants you reachable for company issues, he needs to give you company phones. Next comment says, if he wants you reachable outside of office hours for company issues, he should pay you an on-call bonus during the periods where you have to be reachable, and extra for the times when you are actually called to action. Someone responds, my last few jobs, we've been given a choice of a company phone or a hefty subsidy towards our personal phone bills. Someone else says, sorry boss, I do not use my personal phone for company business. If I am required to answer calls after business hours, then I need a company phone and on-call pay. Second story of the day. You need me to stop calling in advance for my TCG order? I just got home from this experience and I wanted to share. As a hobby, I have taken to trading card games, Pokemon, and Magic the Gathering to be specific. I am not collecting sealed products, but rather I am usually buying bulk so that I can make multiple decks and play with my family. This is important because I am often making huge bulk orders that consist of 50 cards or more. There are a few shops near me, and I am fortunate enough to be close to about 5 hobby shops that sell Pokemon and Magic singles. I managed to drag my family into the Pokemon TCG hobby roughly a year ago. Since then, the process of making an order was to select from their online stock and check out with the cart. At this time, you are given 2 options. Pay in advance for your order or pay in the store. Paying in advance, while very sensible, has often led to cards being paid for that they did not have in stock. As in, it was mistakenly labeled as in stock, but actually was not. This would then result in a refund system that would take 2 to 3 days to complete. The issue is that it was super inconvenient when I had to wait for 2-3 days to recoup the money. I personally experienced a transaction of a $10 card that needed to be refunded, so I spoke to one of the staff and they told me, when you have big orders, it's perfectly fine to call ahead of time, and we can pick the order when we have time. In fact, as long as you don't abuse this process, it works out for everyone. That staff member is awesome. And so for a year, that's exactly what I did. This process accomplishes 3 things. 1, I am not paying for a product that couldn't be fulfilled. 2, I would reduce my time waiting because I called ahead of time by 4 to 5 hours. 3, the staff members would have plenty of time to grab the order. I never abused this process and always came through when I said I would come through. Now this wouldn't be malicious compliance if not for the next part. About 2 months ago, me and my family took the dive into Magic the Gathering because Commander is a blast. This has caused me to start hoarding cards again and making decks for myself and for my family's usage. So I was back into the swing of things again, making 50 plus single card orders from this shop that I loved very much. During my usual 4-hour in advance phone call, I was told, hey, you have to stop calling in these orders. It's store policy to only pull orders that have been paid for. We won't be pulling your cards until they are paid for. Weird, I was told otherwise, but I will ask them when I get there. So I get there to pick up and pay for my order and tried to explain that this process was something that a previous staff member told me was A-okay and even encouraged. There were 2 staff members and they both responded again with a very terse and repeated message of, "It's store policy." The message was fine enough, but the tone and rudeness had me floored. They told me from now on, prepay for all of my orders and then come to pick them up. So here is where the malicious compliance begins. It was clear what they wanted me to do, prepay and show up. So a few weeks later, what I did was scroll through their inventory and started the blingification of my decks. I proceeded to spend roughly 40 minutes scrolling through their online inventory and adding to my cart with various amounts of most holofoil basic land card I could find for under $1. For those of you who aren't familiar, these basic lands are pretty cheap, 10 to 60 cents each. They also are categorized by sets and as individual printings. So each basic land has its own set and its own foil print version. This means that they would need to hunt each land by set and by foil print. I had carded roughly 100 cards. 100 cards that they would need to hunt through at least 40 different sets. They would also need to specifically find the foil only of the basic lands. Even more, I gave them an hour of time to pick the order. An hour, while definitely not a lot of time, is more than enough to grab this order. When I get there, it was one of the 2 guys that had reinforced the new method of ordering. Even better, he was swamped. He hadn't even started my order. I would have loved to give him the 4 to 5 hours that I normally would give, but it was store policy that I stopped calling in advance and just order, pay, and show up. So I wait. I asked if they started my order. He quickly responded with, "Yes, I am getting to it." I think that even he knew that this would have been much easier if I had called 4 hours in advance like I normally would. This may be strange to say, but I was very happy that there were 4 cards that were not available for the order. So I had paid for 4 cards that I would never see fulfilled. Do you remember the staff member that was awesome? Yeah, he showed up about 30 minutes into my wait, and he asked if I had been waiting for a long time. I had said that it was about 30 minutes. For my wait, he had given me one of the tournament participant packs, and I had actually pulled a $30 card, Roaming Throne. The exchange was made. I waited 40 minutes. 4 cards were missing. I plan on approaching their social media or shop owner and ask for clarification from the establishment on what I should be doing in the future. That will be something I do in the near future, but for now, I feel vindicated. The staff member had to frantically hunt for the cards and even had to tell me that there were cards missing, all things that the previous system avoided. Top comment says, "That's horrible. Do it again." OP says, "Oh, I absolutely intend to. LOL, I only got to bling up my red-white samurai deck and my mono-black Yahani deck." Second top comment says, "I hope you took a second or two to point out how awful this system is." OP says, "So I did, but it wasn't as constructive as I would hope. I asked the nice dude if this was still how I should be doing this. Should I keep prepaying even if you guys don't really know if the card is in stock? He tried to tell me that the refund stuff should be faster now depending on your bank. And we've talked about the past refund experience. I even asked if I should call in advance, and he kind of shrugged and said, do whatever you think helps. Basically, not a super helpful conversation. The guy who pulled my order, one of the 2 original staff members who was rude to me, seemed disinterested in talking much. Right after the transaction, he seemed to have slipped away before really interacting with me." The last comment says, "I've never heard of a store pulling online orders same day. That's mad to me. Kudos to them getting it done so fast. Any store I have been to notified a customer when it's ready, and even then it's usually the next business day, so they're not pulling orders when they're swamped. Seems like this whole issue could have been avoided if they just offered to contact the customer when it's pulled, so they can also tell them which cards were missing before pickup." OP says, "Just to be honest, this store in particular is extremely well organized. The fact that he pulled this 100-card list in roughly 30 minutes is impressive and a huge reason I go there often. I don't want it to seem like I am a hater on this store. 99% of the time, I am a happy customer. The way they communicated to me to not call in as if I were being a nuisance frustrates me deeply." Third story. Roommate broke my can opener, so I bought a new one that I knew I could figure out how to use. So I rent rooms out in my house. I generally do it with friends or friends of friends. A couple years ago, I had this roommate who was the ex-husband of a friend of mine, and I felt sorry for him, so gave him a discount on rent. He still fell behind, but that's a totally different malicious compliance story. He was the worst roommate I've ever had for many reasons. For this account, He was pretty much living off of canned food when he wasn't stealing my food. And he used my can opener every day. Well, he broke it, and he came to me and told me that, as a landlord, I needed to get a new can opener. Before I get to the malicious compliance, let me add, he was very proud of his Harvard PhD. He didn't use it in his minimum wage job, but he never avoided an opportunity to remind me that my PhD was from a state school, and his was from Harvard. Note, I was working in the career that used my PhD knowledge, and the program I went to has several Nobel laureates, and I've worked with some of them. My roommate was pretty much a failure in life and had slipped into leeching off others to survive. He had no marketable skills. Anyway, the malicious compliance, I bought a new can opener, but I got one that is really tricky to use. It basically works like an electric can opener, but is manual. I knew there was no way this incompetent roommate would be able to figure out how to use it, and he couldn't. I'd find mangled cans in the garbage, not even recycling. He came to me and asked how to use the can opener. My response, a guy with a Harvard degree should certainly be able to figure that out on his own, if a guy like me can. Top comment. If a guy with a Harvard PhD couldn't figure out how to use a can opener, maybe he should stick to opening cans with a spoon, or at least ask help before bragging about his degree. What's next? Solving world hunger with the paperclip? Someone responds, some people get degrees because passing tests is all they're good at. Someone else responds, right, all that bragging about Harvard, but defeated by a can opener, kind of proves that book smarts don't always translate into real life skills. Second comment says, how do you know when someone's gone to Harvard? Don't worry, they'll tell you. Someone responds, can you imagine the announcements if someone went to Harvard and was a vegan? This is great. Someone else responds, I had a coworker get talked up at a bar by a guy who had, for some reason, felt the need to pull up his LinkedIn bio to show that he went to Harvard. Even though she was like, I totally believed him. I just wasn't super impressed. She had gone to a state school, 0 student loans, worked in the same field, but in an arguably better job, better pay and hours at the very least. He was humble bragging about going to Aruba for a week for his job. We'd just come back from 3 weeks in Japan for ours. She was like, yeah, work travel is tiring. How about these margaritas, huh? I'm like, dude, y'all are both in an on-the-border bar at lunch on Wednesday. Harvard 20 plus years ago isn't the flex you think it is. And showing off your LinkedIn in an attempt to impress someone is kind of sad. Worst part is she's a super nice person. So she was like, no, I was happy for him that he went to Harvard and got to go to Aruba for work. She just thought he was looking for commiseration, not to wow someone. Final story of the day. He told me to do the timesheet and send to payroll. So I did. Payroll were baffled. This happened some years ago. The timesheet is the manager's job, not admin. Our manager left, and we got a new one who immediately assigned this job to me. I told him it was a manager's job, but he insisted I do it. I ticked everyone in 5 days a week, 9 to 5 p.m. Some worked part-time. Some worked flexible days, so not in every day. Some were not in at all. Payroll queried the timesheet. New boss never gave it to me again. Edit. Thanks everyone for the replies. Manager couldn't say or do anything because it was his job. He would have gotten into trouble, not me. To fire me, we would have had to go through the process, etc., which would have exposed him. Top comment says, that's the way to do it. Someone responds, money for nothing. Second comment says, you should have put your work colleagues down for 3 hours overtime as well. Someone else says, Dilbert principle number 3. If you don't want to do a job, do it badly. You'll never be asked to do it again. Someone responds, but doesn't that run the risk of getting fired? Someone responds to this comment saying, it runs the risk of being promoted from what I've seen. Someone else says, it's your boss's task. He has to explain why he gave it to someone who did it badly. Thanks for listening. See you guys in the next one. Have a wonderful day. Bye.